The noise was deafening that Tuesday morning as I squeezed onto the downtown express train. You know those mornings, when the city seems to collectively decide that everyone needs to be somewhere at exactly the same time. The doors barely closed behind me, pressing me further into the crowd of suits, backpacks, and tired expressions. I clutched my noise-canceling headphones like a lifeline. They weren't anything fancy, just a pair of over-ear Sonys I'd saved up for after 3 months of overtime shifts at the bookstore. But in that moment, they were my sanctuary. I'd been living in the city for almost 2 years, but the morning commute never got easier. The constant press of bodies, the symphony of coughs and conversations, the screeching of the train against the tracks, it all created this overwhelming cacophony that made my anxiety spike before I'd even had my second cup of coffee. These headphones were my defense mechanism, my way of creating a bubble of calm in the chaos. As the train lurched forward, I fumbled to put them on, nearly elbowing the person next to me in the process. "Sorry," I mumbled, not making eye contact. That was the unspoken rule of commuting, wasn't it? Minimize interaction, avoid eye contact, pretend you're alone even when you're pressed against strangers like sardines. I finally managed to position the headphones over my ears and reached for my phone to start my playlist, the carefully curated collection of songs that would carry me through the next 45 minutes. But my finger froze above the screen. My battery was at 2%. I'd forgotten to charge my phone overnight, a rookie mistake. I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath, resigning myself to 45 minutes of unfiltered city noise. Just as I was about to put my headphones away, I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. I turned to find myself looking into the warmest brown eyes I'd ever seen. They belonged to a man about my age, maybe a few years older. He had a neatly trimmed beard and a hesitant smile that somehow managed to look both apologetic and amused. "Battery died?" he asked, gesturing to my phone. His voice was soft, but clear enough to cut through the train noise. I nodded, surprised by the interaction. "Forgot to charge it last night." He held up his own phone and a splitter. "I have enough battery for both of us, if you want to share." "I noticed your headphones. They're the same model as mine." He held up his own pair of Sonys, identical to mine except for a small rainbow sticker on the side. There was something about his offer that caught me off guard. It wasn't just the kindness of a stranger, though that was rare enough on the morning commute. It was the implicit invitation to share something intimate. Music is personal, after all. Your playlist says a lot about who you are. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I don't want to impose on your morning." His smile widened, revealing a slight dimple in his right cheek. "Not at all. To be honest, I could use the company. These commutes get pretty lonely." That was how it started. A dead battery, a pair of noise-canceling headphones, and a stranger's kindness. I plugged my headphones into the splitter he offered, and suddenly, we were connected by more than just proximity on a crowded train. The first song that came through was "Vienna" by Billy Joel. I couldn't help but smile. "Good choice," I said, settling back as the familiar piano intro filled my ears. He looked pleased. "You like Billy Joel?" My dad played his albums constantly when I was growing up. This song got me through some tough times in college. "Same here," he said, and there was something in his expression, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, that made me feel like we'd known each other much longer than 5 minutes. As the train rocked and swayed through the underground tunnels, we shared more than just music. In between songs, we exchanged fragments of our lives. His name was Eli. He worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm downtown. He'd moved to the city 3 years ago from a small town upstate, seeking the anonymity and opportunity that only a metropolis could provide. "What about you?" he asked as Regina Spektor gave way to Hosier. "I'm Alex," I replied. "I work at Cornerstone Books during the day, but I'm trying to finish my novel at night. Been here almost 2 years, and I still get lost at least once a week." He laughed at that, a warm sound that somehow cut through both the music and the train noise. The city has that effect. Just when you think you've figured it out, it shows you something new. Let me explain why this moment matters. In a city of millions, where most interactions are transactional at best, finding a genuine connection feels almost miraculous. We're all so guarded, so careful about who we let into our personal space. But sometimes, the most meaningful connections come from the simplest gestures, like sharing headphones with a stranger on a train. As our journey continued, the music became a backdrop to our conversation. We discovered shared tastes beyond Billy Joel, a mutual appreciation for Florence and the Machine, a guilty pleasure for 80s power ballads, a respect for classical compositions that neither of us could name but both recognized. With each song, the invisible wall between stranger and friend seemed to dissolve a little more. Then came a moment I'll never forget. Eli switched to a song I'd never heard before, something instrumental with a gentle piano melody that seemed to float above the chaos of the train. As the music played, we both fell silent. Not an awkward silence, but a comfortable one. For the first time since boarding, I became aware of the sensation of the headphones against my ears, the slight pressure that sealed out the world and sealed us in together. In that moment of shared silence, I looked at Eli, really looked at him. The way his eyes closed slightly as he listened, the rhythm of his breathing, the way his fingers tapped gently against his knee in time with the music. There was something beautiful about sharing this bubble of quiet with someone else, about finding stillness together in the midst of motion. When the song ended, he opened his eyes and caught me watching him. Neither of us looked away. "That was beautiful," I said. "What was it?" "Something I composed," he replied, a hint of shyness in his voice. "Just a hobby, but it helps me process things sometimes." "You wrote that?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "It's incredible." He shrugged, but I could tell he was pleased. Music has always been my way of making sense of the world. When things get too loud, literally or figuratively, I create something that helps me find balance. I do the same thing with writing, I admitted. It's like creating a space where things make sense, even when reality doesn't cooperate. "Exactly," he said, and the way he looked at me then, like he was seeing something familiar in a stranger, made my heart beat a little faster. The train announcement broke our moment, declaring the next stop was mine. I felt a strange disappointment, realizing our shared journey was coming to an end. 45 minutes had passed in what felt like 5. "This is me," I said, reluctantly unplugging my headphones from the splitter. "Mine too, actually," Eli replied, gathering his things. "I usually get off at the next stop, but I could use the extra walk this morning." Was he extending our time together? The thought made me smile as we navigated through the crowd to the doors. Once on the platform, away from the press of bodies, I could see him more clearly. He was taller than I'd realized, with broad shoulders under his navy peacoat. The morning light from the station windows caught in his dark curls, giving them an almost auburn highlight. "Which way are you headed?" he asked as we climbed the stairs to street level. I pointed east. "Cornerstone is about 3 blocks that way. Mind if I walk with you? My office is in that direction too." The morning air was crisp as we emerged onto the street, the city fully awake now. Without the headphones, we were back in the world of honking taxis and construction noise, but somehow it felt less overwhelming with company. "So," Eli began as we waited for a crossing signal, "same time tomorrow?" There was a hopefulness in his question that mirrored my own feelings. "Same train car," I suggested. "I'll bring a fully charged phone," he promised with that dimpled smile. And that was how our routine began. Every morning, we'd find each other in the same train car. Sometimes we'd share music through Eli's splitter, other times we'd just talk, our headphones hanging around our necks, forgotten. We created our own little tradition, alternating days of who got to choose the playlist. His choices revealed a depth I found myself increasingly drawn to, from classical compositions to indie artists I'd never heard of. Each selection seemed to tell me something new about him. On my days, I found myself carefully curating songs that I thought he might like, but also ones that expressed things I wasn't ready to say out loud. Did he notice when I included Something to Talk About by Bonnie Raitt? Or I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston? If he did, he never let on. But sometimes I caught him watching me during certain lyrics, a thoughtful expression on his face. Our conversations deepened with each commute. I learned about his family, supportive but traditional, struggling to reconcile their religious beliefs with their love for their gay son. He told me about coming out in his small town, about the friends he lost, and the ones who surprised him with their unwavering support. I shared my own coming out story, less dramatic but still marked by its moments of fear and eventually, acceptance. The hardest part, he told me one morning as we listened to Sufjan Stevens, wasn't even the negative reactions. It was realizing that I'd spent so many years being afraid of something that, when it finally happened, felt like relief more than anything else. All that time wasted on fear. "I know exactly what you mean," I said. It's like you're carrying this weight for so long that you forget what it feels like not to have it. And then suddenly it's gone, and you can breathe again. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Still learning how to breathe sometimes, he admitted. I found myself sharing things with Eli that I rarely talked about with anyone else. My insecurities about my writing, my fear that I'd never finish my novel, my complicated relationship with my mother, who loved me fiercely, but never quite understood me. He listened in a way that made me feel heard, offering insights that were thoughtful without being presumptuous. 2 weeks into our morning routine, Eli suggested we meet outside of our commute. There's a coffee shop near my office that has live music on Thursday nights. Would you want to check it out? Maybe around 7. My heart did a little flip. Was this a date? Or just friends extending their time together? I wasn't sure, but I knew I wanted to see him outside the context of rushing crowds and morning grogginess. I'd like that, I said, trying to sound casual while my pulse raced. Text me the address. That evening at the coffee shop was the first time I saw Eli truly in his element. Away from the train, dressed in a fitted button-down rather than his work coat, he seemed more relaxed, more animated. The venue was small and intimate, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. The performer that night was a woman with a guitar and a voice that somehow managed to be both powerful and vulnerable at the same time. As we sat across from each other, mugs of tea between us, he remembered I preferred tea to coffee, a detail I hadn't realized I'd shared. I found myself noticing new things about him. The way he used his hands when he talked about something he was passionate about. The slight crease between his eyebrows when he concentrated. The genuine way he engaged with the server, asking about her day and remembering her name. What? He asked, catching me staring. Nothing, I said, feeling my cheeks warm. It's just nice to see you without having to yell over train noise. He smiled. It's nice to see you without having to rush off to work, too. As the evening progressed, our conversation flowed as easily as it did on the train, but with a new layer of awareness between us. When our hands accidentally touched reaching for the sugar, neither of us pulled away immediately. When he laughed at something I said, his eyes lingered on mine a beat longer than necessary. The performer began a cover of Vienna, our first shared song, and Eli's eyes lit up with recognition. Remember? He asked. How could I forget? I replied. Day 1 of our headphone-sharing adventure. He leaned forward slightly. Can I tell you something? My battery wasn't actually low that day. I blinked in surprise. What? His smile turned sheepish. I'd seen you on the train a few times before. Always with those headphones. Always in your own world. I wanted to talk to you, but I couldn't figure out how without seeming creepy. Then that day, I noticed you looking frustrated at your phone, and I thought, maybe this is my chance. The revelation sent a warm flutter through my chest. So you invented a reason to share your music with me? Technically, I offered to share your headphones, he corrected with a grin. But yes, was that weird? It feels weird saying it out loud. I shook my head, smiling. Not weird. Sweet, actually. I'm glad you did. Me too, he said softly. After the coffee shop, our relationship shifted. Our morning commutes continued, but now they were punctuated by evening meetups. Dinner at a hole-in-the-wall Thai place he loved. A walk through the park on an unusually warm spring day. A bookstore browsing session where he patiently listened to me rant about misclassified fiction. Each meeting felt like peeling back another layer, revealing more of the person beneath. The first time he kissed me was after a movie night at my apartment. We'd been watching old Hitchcock films, and as Rear Window ended, we found ourselves discussing the theme of observation, how we all watch each other's lives from a distance, making assumptions based on fragments. That's what I was doing before I talked to you, Eli admitted. Watching from a distance, creating a story about who you might be. And was I anything like you imagined? I asked. He shook his head. You're so much more. Then he leaned in, hesitating just enough to give me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. His lips were soft against mine, the kiss gentle at first, then deeper as I responded. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I've been wanting to do that since Vienna, he whispered. The song or the city? I teased. Both, he laughed and kissed me again. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges. Eli's family, while trying to be supportive, sometimes said things that hurt him deeply. My writing deadlines often meant canceling plans at the last minute. We had our first real fight 3 months in, when a misunderstanding about an ex-boyfriend led to insecurities on both sides bubbling to the surface. But through it all, we had our morning commute, those 45 minutes of shared music and conversation that had started it all. No matter what tension might exist between us on the train, with our headphones creating our private world, we always found our way back to each other. 6 months after that first shared song, Eli took me to a recording studio. He'd been mysterious about our plans for the evening, only telling me to dress comfortably and bring my headphones. "What are we doing here?" I asked as he led me into a small room with a piano. "I've been working on something," he said, a nervous energy about him that I rarely saw. "Remember that instrumental piece you heard that first day? I've been expanding it." He sat at the piano and began to play. The melody was familiar, the same gentle notes that had created our first moment of shared silence. But now it had evolved into something richer, more complex. As he played, I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me. When the final notes faded, I opened my eyes to find him watching me, vulnerability written across his features. "It's called noise canceling," he said quietly. "Because that's what you do for me, Alex. In all the noise and chaos, you're my quiet center." I crossed the room to him then, words failing me, and expressed with a kiss what I couldn't say aloud. Later that night, as we lay tangled together in his apartment, I finally found the words. "You know," I said, tracing patterns on his chest, "I've been stuck on the ending of my novel for months. But I think I finally know how it ends." "How's that?" he asked, his voice drowsy and content. "Two strangers meet on a train," I said. "They share headphones, and in the silence between songs, they find something neither expected." He pulled me closer. "Sounds familiar." "The best stories always have a ring of truth," I murmured against his skin. A year after our first meeting, we decided to move in together. The decision came naturally, a logical progression of nights spent at each other's places until the distinction between yours and mine began to blur. We found an apartment halfway between both our workplaces, a compromise that meant a new commute for both of us. On our first morning taking the new train line together, Eli pulled out his headphones and the splitter that had started it all. "For old time's sake," he offered. As we shared music on that new route, surrounded by different faces but the same city energy, I thought about how far we'd come. From strangers sharing headphones to partners sharing a life. From a dead battery to a connection fully charged with possibility. The city still roared around us, still chaotic, still overwhelming at times. But now, even without headphones, we had found our quiet center in each other. In a world full of noise, we had created our own kind of silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of understanding, of acceptance, of love. That's the thing about noise canceling, I've learned. It doesn't actually create true silence. Instead, it generates a counter-frequency, a response that meets the chaos and transforms it into something manageable. That's what Eli and I had become for each other. Not an escape from life's complications, but a harmonizing force that made them easier to bear. Sometimes, when we pass that original train station, I think about that Tuesday morning and how different my life would be if my phone had been charged, or if Eli hadn't found the courage to tap my shoulder. So many little moments had to align perfectly for us to find each other. Maybe that's true of all great love stories. They don't always announce themselves with dramatic declarations or love at first sight. Sometimes, they begin in the smallest of gestures, a shared pair of headphones, a moment of silence in a noisy train, a connection found in the space between songs. Eli still composes music, and I'm still working on my novel. We still have our challenges, family dynamics to navigate, career setbacks to overcome, disagreements to resolve. But every morning, we board the train together, sometimes sharing headphones, sometimes just holding hands. And in those moments, with the city rushing by outside the windows, I'm reminded of what we discovered together. That even in the loudest, most chaotic places, connection is possible. That silence, when shared, can be the most intimate sound in the world. And that sometimes, the most beautiful journeys begin with a simple question: battery died? So if you find yourself on a crowded train someday, headphones in hand, and a stranger offers to share their music, take a chance. You never know where that shared silence might lead. In a world that never stops making noise, the connections we forge in quiet moments are the ones that often speak the loudest. Total underscore char underscore count, 18,437.